Right then, it's time for a little bit something different. It's time for some analysis. So, I've got some notes this time to try. Well, I had notes last time. It's just that they're a bit more structured this time in terms of my thoughts after looking through everything. So this is what I did. I went into every single game in the schedule screen, as you do. Obviously, I turned on some filters and that. Actually, I forgot to do the Villa one, but I figured since we won 4-0, there wasn't as much as I could learn from that, from what we were doing wrong. Although I could have potentially looked at the goals we scored, although there was a couple of long ranges. So I didn't think it was that important, and I still don't think it is. So just looking at this now. So the first example was the Everton game. So all I would do basically is I would go into the match. I'd go into the, where is it? Players. This screen. Now, obviously, sometimes it will take a little while to load because it needs to generate the match reports and whatnot. And what is happening now? There we go. So yeah, it'll generate the match reports and whatnot. And the first thing I would do is look at the shots we were conceding and scoring. So let's just have a look at the shots with Everton. So they had a load of shots blocked. The majority of these were free kicks. This one was Richarlison. I don't know why it credited this twice because it is the same, as far as I can tell, the same shot. It just seems to have given him 2 shots. It's when he broke round the side, and I thought it was saved, but apparently it was blocked. So this here, Richarlison's shot, was the only actual, like, chance, so to speak, that we actually conceded in the Everton game. And that was because he got in behind Martinez. Sometimes that will happen, and I feel like Julio Vigo doesn't happen as much with him because Martinez is a bit more lumbering, so to speak. We had a shot saved, which I think was a free kick from long range, and you just have a look at this. Obviously, you want to actually, like, click on them and go watch highlight. That way you can actually see it was a free kick. So this was a relatively straightforward one. Vlasic's free kick, saved fairly comfortably by Negoita, but you know. So all I did was that for every single shot that we conceded or had. I guess that's another long-range strike, I think. And these are a couple of, I believe, headers from corners. I think they're headers from corners or free kicks. Essentially, Everton did not threaten us that much, in all honesty. Their goal was the only one that was really threatening, and it wasn't particularly... This one actually came from their throw-in, as you can see. The ball is going to get lumped across. Watch number 21, or is it number 14? Yeah, he peels away here, just creates a little bit of space, and the goalkeeper should be doing better with that, in all honesty. But that's how we conceded in the Everton game. Now, we didn't do a lot ourselves, so after I'd looked at how we conceded, for the most part, I was able to ascertain that, generally speaking, against Everton, despite losing the game, we were actually despite drawing the game, we were actually pretty strong in this one defensively. The majority of the chances, or shots rather, that we gave up were either headers from free kicks that were fairly innocuous, headers from corners that were fairly innocuous, long-range free kicks which were unlikely to go in, they're often saved, so it pads the stats out a little bit. The goal was a bit of a soft one, we could have done better, but it came from a throw-in, sort of. The way I looked at it is it was a fairly strong defensive performance. We limited them to not a lot. But then from the other perspective, let me just clear the events. I'm not going to do this for everyone. I'm just going to show you the examples here that I did with the Everton game, for example. In fact, let me get my notes up so I can tell you exactly what I actually said about the Everton game. Because there's another thing I did as well. Let me just get these up on the other screen. So, Everton, right. So, I've got shots conceded. All the shots were either from direct, indirect, free kicks or corners, other than the one from the goal, which was from open play, and there was the one from Richarlison. So we'll talk about that as well. We actually played quite well defensively and gave them virtually nothing. Richarlison had a chance when he got in behind Martinez. For some reason, the game credited him with 2 shots for the same shot. I don't know why it does that, but that definitely was the same shot. Unless he shot it deflected back, and then, I don't know. It's a weird one. For the goal, started from a throw-in. Vlasic lost his marker several times, and we should have done better. But for the most part, it was a reasonably strong defensive performance. Didn't give up a lot of shots. Now, if I look at this from the reverse perspective, we actually had a decent number of shots on target. These two were indicative of a different problem. Our 3 shots on target, other than the goal, one was Roussel's header from a free kick, which was a decent one. The other 2 were Lane and Wright, cutting inside and trying to bend one inside just inside the D. So from this area here, this is Wright, and this is Jamie Lane, and this is Kevin Wright. So with both of these, Lane cuts inside, shoots from inside the D. It's too far out to be a massively dangerous shot unless they're really good, and it's also too close in to probably count as a long shot. So this is the area, this particular area here, is where we're getting a lot of shots from. They're too far out to be super dangerous most of the time, as you would have seen, but they're also too close to be counted as long shots a lot of the time. So it's exactly what I was thinking about, basically. So they're cutting inside and shooting from here, whereas I would prefer Jamie Lane to not do that, basically. Kevin Wright, again, he's playing with his back to goal a little bit too much, and that's one of the things I took into account for this. So Hume also hit the post from a free kick. Roussel had a header that was narrowly wide from a throw-in. We had another shot from Lane inside the D, similar to this situation, but unfortunately he was off target this time. So again, the same kind of position. In fact, let me try and find it. I think it's this one. Yeah, look, similar kind of position. And Wright had a good chance from a header off a cross from Abasolo. And Abasolo also got a good header from a Bednar cross. So 2 of our better chances in this game. Let me just clear the events again. Kevin Wright, it was this one here. This is the header he missed from a much, much closer position. From the penalty spot, he probably should be doing better here, but it was a much better quality of chance. If you're looking at this from like an XG perspective, he's closer to the goal and he's central. This is he's much more likely to score from here than he is from here, particularly as he was uncontested. So he should have done a lot better in that one. And Abasolo also had one, I think, which missed from a similar position, although he was a bit further away. Bednar crosses it in from here. Abasolo it's a tough one at the far post, if I recall, because he's battling with a defender. So that was a difficult one. Wright's goal was a near post cross. So let's have a look at this. Wright getting across the near post. Martinez runs down here, whips it in. That was from a throw-in, though, because Martinez, generally speaking, won't get that far forward. And when he does, he crosses from around about here rather than here. But because he came up to almost the byline, he was able to whip one in behind. The defenders then started to run towards their own goal, and Wright was able to get across the last man. And he has scored a couple of goals like that, as you would have seen. And also, when you're crossing from these positions, if you're crossing from here, the defenders can hold a higher line, which means if they do clear it, often it will fall to one of their players. But if you force them back deeper like this, when they head it away, generally speaking, we'll have someone like a Sloughy, like a Stayiku, on the edge of the box to pick up the second ball and either recycle the possession or take a strike on themselves. Now, obviously, we didn't do that in this game. We didn't need to because this goal came from a throw-in, which is why Martinez was so far forward, and it allowed Wright to get into that position. But I noticed that that was a situation where we looked effective. We scored a goal from it in this game, after all. So the best chances in this game for me were these three here. We had the goal, obviously, which is a good chance, which came from a ball down the right and then whipped across nice and low into this position. We had Abasolo's, which came from a header from Camille Bednar, where he whipped it in and Abasolo was able to make a run to the back post, but it was a tough one. But the second best chance for me was this one for Kevin Wright, where the ball was out on the right-hand side with Abasolo and he whipped it in a little bit earlier, which meant that we sort of caught out the defenders and he was able to get into that position. And because the ball wasn't aimed to the back post for Jamie Lane, it was aimed, I think Jamie Lane was... he hadn't arrived in the box yet, which meant that they had to aim for Kevin Wright, and he was able to get in there and actually win a header. So I do feel like something in the patch has changed the way that inside forwards behave, and it means that those balls to the back post for Jamie Lane just do not seem to be effective in any way anymore. Like, he just doesn't seem to make the runs, and when he does, the fullbacks are much more sensible at marking him, which to me suggests that we need to be heading back towards our striker, or rather, simply not restricting our wingers to who they can be crossing the ball to. I feel like if we give them more of a freedom to cross to, they'll find the cross for whoever's free, and it might allow us to be a little bit more expressive and not quite so structured in those areas. So again, I looked at that and I thought, right, that is something that we can definitely take forward into the next game. Oh, not into the next game, but so I did all of this literally on the day after the last match. So we had a week in between to train any tactics changes I wanted to make. So that was my first set of thoughts. I might actually go through every game if you want, to be honest, because there's some thoughts for everyone. Some of them become the same after a while, though, which is why I probably won't. But I do want to show you a couple of things defensively. One in particular has really concerned me, and I think it's a bug in the match engine, personally, but we'll talk about that in a minute. So, yeah, that was Everton. I did some cross analysis for this one, too. Bednar was good for crosses, which is nice to see. One of them led to a chance for Abasolo. Now, another note I made here is I wonder if we turn off playing for set pieces, we can get better crosses in and sooner, because like someone said, when players are playing for set pieces, you're actually anticipating the block and trying to get the player to block the ball, which is the last thing we want. Yeah, we win throw-ins, but we're not scoring from corners anymore at all, for the most part, or certainly well below average for the league, I expect, which means that the corner setup has been nerfed in some way, so we'll have to try and change that. And I'm sure I'll figure something out, but for now, I haven't had time to do that, which means there's no point in playing for set pieces right now when we could be getting the balls into the box, and that's something I really have changed, and I think that's made a massive difference to us, particularly in those situations. Let's see what else I've got here. Lane only crossed the ball once and it was from a free kick, because generally he's cutting inside. Abasolo completed one cross, and that was the one for the right header. So a good opportunity, and Martinez's cross led to the goal. So crossing definitely seems to be a good situation, but the two best chances came from crosses either to the near post here or to the centre, both of which were aimed at Kevin Wright. He probably should have had 2 goals in this match, in all honesty. He was completely unmarked for this header. Now, Kevin Wright isn't great in the air. I mean, his heading isn't bad, but he's not tall enough. I feel like someone like John Villa might well have scored that, and that's kind of why I was interested to bring him in, because I think this is the way this tactic kind of has to go. Although I have still tried to play into the Kevin Wright approach, and I'll more on that in a minute. The other thing I did, which I'll show you, actually I'll show you this now because I think it's important, is to go into the team report and do the comparison page. I've shown you this briefly in the analysis video once before, I think. So what I did was I essentially went into the defence, or each individual, actually no, what I did was this way around, because that way you get more of an idea. And I looked at where our defenders, midfielders and strikers are strong in certain areas. So you can see defenders, best jumping reach in the Premier League by a pretty reasonable amount, I would say. So I was looking at where are our defenders strong and how can we use that then to plan the style of play we wanted to do. And I've got a few notes on this, which I'm going to just quickly talk about as well. Apologies if this is a bit, dense, but I just thought, you know what, I might as well go for everything here. So, great jumping reach, 4th or better in virtually everything, 5th for balance, which isn't too bad as well. We struggle a little bit on natural fitness, which is interesting, actually, but it's not super important. It could be later down the line, but I feel like that's more to do with our younger players, it seems. Most of our, apart from, most of our first team squad have got decent natural fitness. So we're very physically strong, which suggests we can bully teams off the ball. And a question I was asking is, perhaps to myself anyway, is whether we could get away with a narrow defence, because if we allow them to bring the crosses in, we've got such great jumping reach and players that are great in the air and strength that we might just be able to head everything away, and it would allow us to regroup a little bit faster. And because we're not closing down the crosses as much, we might struggle. I haven't actually ended up implementing that yet, but it's a thing I might consider in the future if that comes to pass and whatnot. Looking at the mental side of things as well, we sort of struggle. We're good for aggression and good for decisions, but we struggle in bravery, composure, concentration, flair, leadership, particularly off the ball. So to me, that suggests simple stuff for our defenders, particularly the centre-backs, is the best way to go at the moment. Just getting them with the ball and distributing it to someone who's more creative than them, basically. Not trying to do anything fancy. That was definitely... Ooh, well, you can't actually see it because it defaults to that, but you can see what I mean here. Under or below average for just about everything, and leadership is appalling, which is very interesting, actually. And looking at the technical side of things, it's a similar story. I'm not going to go through this for all of them. Good free kicks, we've got some good throw-ins and good pens. So our defenders are very good at set pieces, but we struggle with finishing, first touch, heading, interestingly, passing and technique. So again, it leads into the whole, we must do things simply. I'm not going to show them much of the examples for the other ones, but essentially, our midfielders are very strong and have good stamina and jumping reach, good for pace and acceleration and stuff, but they lack balance and fitness. They're very good for bravery, decisions, and teamwork. So again, they're very robust, but they do lack a little bit in other areas. Even though, which is a weird one actually, our passing is 17th best, even though we've got someone like Sloughy with 20 passing. So I think it's taking into account certain things that don't make this entirely accurate, but you can generally speaking get an idea of the squad as a whole. We're very good in the physicals for the attackers too. Very pacey, very strong, very agile, good balance. The mentals are a little bit low, but we're very determined. Good technicality. We're the third best finishing on average of strikers in the league, and that's probably gone up even more now that John Villa's joined the club. So this is why I came up with that version 6 tactic, where the idea then was to lull teams in and try and play on the break a little bit with a deeper line and whatnot. But I've decided against that in the end when I took a little bit of a deeper look, because I did this analysis first, and that led me down one route. But then I realised that perhaps we didn't need to make such drastic changes. So let's go back into the match reports. Sorry, I might have to put some edit points because I've literally got like 9 pages of notes to my right-hand side here. Well, I take these things seriously, you know. Plus, I really like doing this sort of stuff. Like, it's not bad. It's not nice when things go wrong, but when you then turn it around and make it go right, in theory, which I don't know if we've done yet, it's a satisfying feeling, I've got to say. Right, so Man United. They didn't have a lot of chances. Again, it's a very similar story to the Everton game. For the most part, we were very strong defensively. They got in behind us, and Nagoita was forced to make a save at one time, which was fine. Sometimes that happens, but he made the save, as often. Other than that, we limited them to virtually nothing. Now, you might be thinking, well, you didn't, because they scored a goal. Right, they did. And we know exactly. I'm going to show you exactly who is responsible for this goal, because this is insane. Not as insane as the one I'm going to show you in a minute, but this one is a bit strange. So watch the ball here. Number 14, I don't know who that is, Maya, has got hold of... Gomez. Should be fine. Sesnignon's going to play the ball into this channel. Now watch what number 5, Pirot, does. Sessignon. So Pirot starts creeping inside here, even though when Gomez brings this down, Maya's going to have this covered quite comfortably. Now watch as this moves on. Suddenly, Pirot is in here when he should be watching the guy coming to his right. And all that happens is Gomez drives the ball inside. There's a huge gap opens up because Pirot gets pulled inside, and Vinicius Jr. is able to finish off the chance for Manchester United. That, to me, was all down to Pirot. If he just holds this position, then Gomez is one-on-one with Maya, and there's a midfielder coming back to close the gap. So Pirot's indecision and bad decisions there completely cost us that goal. Now, that's basically how it was in that game. We had some shots blocked in this one because we took too long. All our shots on target were from headers, mostly weak ones from set pieces. The others were from crosses from the back post, which means Lane can't get in a good enough position to get a power header anymore because he's too far away from the goal. We also hit the woodwork twice, but most of our shots on target were free kicks from headers and throw-ins and shots from distance. So we had some good opportunities, but the shots were almost always blocked because the players were looking to play for set pieces. So what I've done, turned off playing for set pieces. That should be fairly obvious by now. That's what I've done, but that is what I have done. So yeah, that's one of the things I'm looking for. We need to take our shots a little bit faster. I did experiment with playing at a slightly higher tempo, and it kind of worked against Stoke, but I felt like I'm worried that we're going to lose fitness too hard if we start playing too high of a tempo. It's something I think we could toggle in games perhaps, but I don't think we actually need to use it as a standard, but we'll talk more about that in a minute. So yeah, we lost to Man United, bit unfortunate, but you know, we were the architects of our own demise there with Pirot's weird decision to jog inside for some reason. So moving on to the Wolves game. This one, however, features a very strange goal. Let me just have a look and see what I've actually got written down for the Wolves game, because again, got to scroll down some more pages here. So, shots conceded. Of the shots on target, one was a pinball from a cross, which could have been prevented. We should have blocked the cross, but once the ball comes in there, it's anybody's guess. We're clearing it, it's just hitting people and going all over the shop. So, I'm not entirely blaming the defenders for that one. It doesn't matter because we got away with it. And they still didn't have a huge number of shots in this game. One was a set piece, other was a very long range strike. There was no danger. Now the goal conceded was a very, very strange one, and I need to show you this. I have no explanation as to how this goal happened. So this is Daniel Arzani's goal. Let's just get you into this now. Now, what I want you to do, and this is very important, you can see at the back post here, Dimitrov, he's got 2 players on him. Like, so, yeah, we've got a bit of an overload at the back post for Wolves, but you feel like they'll shuffle across, so Taffet Schofer will slightly come across here. Watch what Dimitrov does here, and I have no explanation as to why he does this. Watch this. So he's marking these guys at the back post. 27 here is a centre-back. Maya is marking Rainier here. Watch what Dimitrov does. He runs towards him for absolutely no reason. Why on earth would he be running towards this guy when he's already marked up? I know he's slightly in behind here, but there's no way that pass is going to happen. So what happens then is he's got that guy, and then they're fine. They've got 2-on-2, but he's then left this huge gap, which of course he can then exploit. And then suddenly Dimitrov finds himself in between the 2 centre-backs for some inexplicable reason. Ball comes to Arzani, and of course it's in the bottom corner. I don't know why Dimitrov runs across like that. We don't have him set to mark anyone specifically, so he should not have done that, and I cannot explain to myself why that actually happened. But the point is that cost us a goal in the Wolves game. We'd have won if that didn't happen. So a couple of mistakes in those games cost us 4 points. Just little tiny things, and I don't know what we could have done more apart from score goals. So I've looked at this more as a how can we be better attacking than a how can we be better defensively, because honestly we've actually still been quite good defensively. We're conceding a few more goals, but because we were conceding so few before, I think it makes it look worse than it actually is, and that rating actually went up even more. We're conceding 70% more goals after I added in the stats for West Ham and Bristol City on top of that, so it went up from 60 to 70%, and the number of chances created went up from 30 to 40%. So you could definitely see that we were struggling, and I believe that's because we weren't scoring. I feel like the attack was the best form of defence in these situations, that the defence is solid, but teams play against us differently if we score goals against them because they're going to be a bit more worried, it seems. So yeah, as for our own situation, Melo had a couple of long-range shots that could have easily been blocked as well, but he should have passed. Martinez cut into the D and had a shot, but again, dribbling too much. Abasula had a good header. Lane played one in behind for Wright, which was a really good opportunity, and we need more of those. Wright did well, but he missed the chance. So we missed some chances from good areas, but again, we didn't move the ball fast enough, and we're getting most of our shots blocked. So that leads me down the line of the playing for set pieces, essentially. Against Manchester City, it was a different story because it was a 4-0 win for us. We were brilliant defensively because they didn't make any of these sort of mistakes. And as for going forward, we were just very good. We had people getting in behind them. This was the thing against Manchester City that I noticed. A lot of our crosses were coming from near the byline, particularly from the left-hand side, obviously, with the likes of Bednar. And even the strikers were being played into the channels and whatnot. City were allowing that space. And when we got in behind teams and were able to pull back across, that's when we were really, really dangerous in that game. So I decided to try and recreate that sort of scenario in other games, to try and engineer situations where we could get in behind them. And that's tough when you're the dominant team and you're trying to press teams. So how do you go about getting in behind them? It can be done, I believe, simply by overloading certain positions. So that's what I've tried to change as well. Against Chelsea, I had virtually no answers. They were just imperious against us. Crosses into the box, players were missing stuff. I think it was just players just had a very, very bad day against Chelsea. And Chelsea seemed to play at a very, very high tempo against us, which might have been what caused it, I think. I don't really know. Against Leicester, let's see. Still defended well, but again, they had that shot of the Pavon one where it was just a freak sort of situation. He had 3 players around him and he was able to win a header. That rarely ever happens, so sometimes you're just going to concede goals like that. It didn't look like anyone had made a mistake. He was just very good in that situation. But again, we didn't create anything in that match. The one opportunity we had was Taffet Schofer, who again took too long to get the shot away. He was completely clean. Like, the ball found to him from a free kick and he was all alone in the area, but he took like 3 touches instead of just hitting it, and by the time he got there, it was blocked. So again, stop playing for set pieces, and if he just takes that shot on, I think we equalise in that game. So best chances were from first-time shots in that match. Not that we created a lot at all, but the ones we did create were from first-time shots. So yeah, we need to stop trying to win corners. Forest, the one thing that was different for that one is I had Vigo set to overlap on the right-hand side, and you can see that he was the best player on the pitch in that match because he was getting into those positions. I think it's a bit inexplicable how we didn't score in that match, and there are other reasons for that, but, like, I've got here, Vigo would cross maybe from further up the pitch as it would make things harder for the defender and allow Wright to make those near post runs. If you get to the byline, Wright can make those runs rather than having to try and win headers against much, much stronger and bigger centre-backs. And Vigo definitely allowed us to do that. So that's something else I've looked into for that right-hand side. Against West Ham, well, you all saw that game, but I looked into some of the stuff that you didn't see, like some of the highlights that weren't highlights, so to speak. Clearance headers kept falling to West Ham players on the edge of the box for shots that could go anywhere, which is not good. Their goal shouldn't have happened if Bova had done his job and better tackling. That was an individual mistake. But in terms of our stuff, we actually had some good shots, which the game didn't show us. fullbacks need to be crossing from the byline and allow us to pack the area and allow our midfielders to pick up on the scraps on the edge of the area. So what I have changed now is I've set our right-sided fullback to attacking now, and he's going to the byline, and he's not crossing to the far post anymore. It's not so effective when Martinez is going to play there because he stays back at all time, but will be really good in theory when Vigo is playing there. And the same on the left-hand side. Bednar is now going to be crossing from the byline rather than just crossing from deep, from wherever he wants, to allow us to get those positions to have strikers to run across and to allow us to keep teams penned in. And I think it works. Plus, it means that we can overlap on the right-hand side now because the defenders are strong enough to deal with it. And we've got an anchor man to mean that we're really always going to have about 3 players in the right positions. And unless teams leave a lot of players up, we should be okay because generally speaking, we are the stronger side. Against Bristol City, their goal came from us not shooting and just dribbling instead. You all saw that. Martinez tries to run into the box when he could have just laid it off to one of many players. So another thing I've turned off is the running at defences, because I don't think we need to do that anymore. And also I find that on the break, players tend to dribble with the ball rather than just passing it up and getting us into situations a bit faster, because a lot of our good chances came on the break, because that's when teams can be got at. And I feel like we need to be in a position where we can actually take advantage of those situations, and if they dribble too much, they tend to lose the ball rather than passing it off to players and just tearing teams apart. And that is how we created some chances against Stoke and against Liverpool, was just by playing on the break. We kept a decent amount of the ball against Stoke, I think. Against Liverpool, they had more of the possession, which enabled us to break on them quite effectively. The way I've set this team up now, it seems to work without me changing anything, so that if we dominate the ball, we've got enough width and overlaps to just pepper teams in the box. But if we're struggling in possession, it means that we're able to play on the break without me actually changing anything in the tactic. So it's kind of a one-size-fits-all. In terms of our opportunities, mostly crap, but when we did look good, it was on the break. Having the RB overlap means, well, that our right wing... That's another thing. When our right back is overlapping, it means that Correa or Abasolo can make a more inside run and dominate this area here. So he doesn't have to worry about being out wide, and it adds a third player into the box often, which, of course, will distract one of the defenders too, and draw them away from potentially a striker, giving him a little bit more space. Or he could hang back here and maybe have a run if the ball is knocked back inside to him. There's all sorts of options. Or he could cross it again and draw another defender out. So I feel like that extra overlap is definitely helpful, but it does need very, very athletically strong players. But as we've already established from looking at the squad report, we do have very, very athletic players, particularly in the fullback positions. So Vigo and Bednar and Dimitrov should be able to handle that role fairly well for the most part. So running onto the byline also means we'll be onside. That's another thing. We won't have offsides from crosses if we're crossing from the byline, and it will force the defenders to sit a lot deeper, which could cause all kinds of chaos in the box. So that's essentially the conclusions I came to about the changes we need to make. Defensively, fine, but I definitely felt like there were some changes that were required from an attacking perspective. Now, obviously, we haven't seen how John Villa is going to fit into this tactic. I'm going to try him today against Dortmund and Newcastle and see how he does, because I think it'll be very helpful on the break, because he can provide a focal point due to being 6'2". He's got that extra physicality that perhaps Kevin Wright doesn't have, and he's still rapidly fast, which is very, very nice. He's the striker I've always wanted. Let me just quickly check and see if there wasn't any other things I decided to quickly do. Just quickly go through this now. Very strong defensively despite conceding more goals. I think if we were better up front, we wouldn't be conceding many at the back. The idea of a narrow defence could work, as it would encourage them to cross the ball rather than run at us. Yeah, but I've not implemented that. I might leave that one in the back pocket in case. Some strange mistakes tossed us goals. Can't figure out why the Dimitrov one happened. I believe that's a match engine bug. I think for some reason he thought he was supposed to mark someone who he wasn't, essentially, because I never would set my fullbacks to mark specific players. I would never do that. And if that was the case, I would have thought he would have been marking him to begin with. It's a strange one. I think he's trying to cover a player who's in an offside position. I don't know. But then you'd think he would retreat when he wasn't. I don't know about that one. That might just be a very strange situation. We need to move the ball faster and break in numbers. Stop fannying around. We need to be quicker and stop trying to win corners. Vigo on the overlap had some good shots, but our fullbacks need to be crossing from the bylines to allow us to pack the area and the midfielders to pick up scraps. So yeah, that's essentially what's happened with that. Now I'm just going to quickly take you to the tactics screen so I can actually show you what that means in terms of the team's changes. So let's go to tactics now. So I've moved some stuff around a little bit. So this is County Hunter version 5. This was another one I was thinking about trying. You can see it's more direct. There's distributing quickly. There's a lot of things that have changed about this one. And it's a very, very high press as well. Because I figured that we could get away with that. But I don't think we really need to. And the intensity being as high as it was. Yeah, I never actually tried that in a match. That was my first attempt at doing something. But I eventually went with a version of this into the Stoke game. It wasn't exactly like this. There were some changes I made. Not this one. Right, so first, another change I made is to put him as an advanced forward instead, because I found as a complete forward, he was dropping deep too much, and it meant that when we did get the ball out wide, there was no one in the box, and I feel like I'd rather him be on the shoulder of the last defender. Now, that could be subject to change, because I feel like John Villa might be better off as a complete forward. Actually, I don't know. I mean, he's good. He's very good. Work rate's not amazing. Interesting one. I'm not so set on that one particularly so far. So, other changes I've made. I don't think I actually changed anything on Jamie Lane. I think I set Kevin Wright to dribble. Yeah, I did set him to dribble more because he's got fantastic dribbling, and I want to make the most of that. If there's any player that could be dribbling more, it's our striker, because when he's got the ball, in theory, there shouldn't be anyone else in front of him. I'd rather have these guys passing the ball more, that way they can rip teams open, because once Wright's got the ball, in theory, he should be in on goal, so I want him to push it and dribble a bit more. Abasolo, you can see here, he's a winner on attack, and he is crossing for the byline anyway, so there wasn't really a lot I needed to do on that one. Martinez here, obviously get further forward isn't going to work for him, but we are crossing from the byline, so that might encourage it a bit more. Shoot less often, stay wider and crossing more often. Vigo will be better when he plays there. Let's just put it that way, basically. I think I took dribble more often off of Abdurazak Slawi, and I also turned him into an advanced playmaker. Now, that I can't explain why I did that. I just kind of did. I felt like perhaps having a playmaker who's slightly more advanced might split these three a little bit more and stop them getting clustered together as much, allow them to spread out a little bit more, and it also means that Slawi will be encouraged to get further forward because he is so good when he goes past people. I might turn dribble more back on for him. It just depends, really. Staiku, shoot less, get further forward, which is nice because I want him bombing into those spaces. I turned off dribble more often on basically every player I could. The other changes I made is we're passing into space now. This was something I tried towards the in the Liverpool game, and I think this really wrapped us up a little bit more. You might notice we're also overlapping on the right. The passing directness is back to standard now. At one point I had it on more direct, but I felt like there was a lot of scenarios where a shorter pass would have sufficed, so just being on standard seems to work. The tempo is slightly higher based on the way we're playing, if nothing else. I tried it on full tempo, but I just didn't really like the way that worked. We've turned off work ball into the cross. We're back on mixed crosses as well to give ourselves a bit more of an option in those positions. I got rid of all this stuff here, and I've also boosted the attacking width a little bit to allow us to stretch teams and give us space for our fullbacks to get in behind, and I think that will go quite nicely with our defensive width, since that's also quite wide. And I was wondering if perhaps constantly changing width depending on whether we were in the possession of the ball or not might have been causing problems. We're also no longer playing for set pieces. So yeah, those are the changes we've made to that. This side of things, I don't think I've changed it a great deal. We're on counter-press still, and I think that does work. We are distributing faster now, though, to try and provoke some counter-attacks, but I'm still promoting passing the ball to these players because there isn't an option to do what I want. What I want the goalkeeper to do is when he gets the ball and we're trying to launch a counter, then is where I want him to distribute over. But for most of the point, I want him to distribute to these players so we can play it out from the back, because I found that when I turned this off and just had him distribute to the flanks or wherever he wanted, our players would push right up to try and hold that high line that we have, which is fine. But what I found works quite nicely is when we play it out from the back like this, or not actually play it out from the back because that's a different situation, but when we're playing it out from the goalkeeper from the back, we start off a lot deeper, which encourages our opponents to actually push up the field. So even if they're playing a low defensive line, I find that it allows way more space for us if we start a little bit deeper and then push up when we actually have the ball. Also means we catch them offside a lot more when we do that. So I think that works quite well as a tactic. And as for out of possession, I don't think I changed anything on this one at all, actually. Still defending wide. Everything else here is still the same. So, yeah, those are the changes I've made to the tactic. And, I mean, you can see the results from it so far. We had 49 shots in 2 matches. 49 shots in 2 games. And we were hitting the target way more. I think I actually did make some little adjustments to my notes to include what actually did change from the previous one. So, just looking at this, let's just see. So, yeah. In the 2 games, now obviously 2 games is not enough to give me any real data points, but in those 2 games, we're averaging 12.5 shots on target per game and 24.5 shots per game, which, as you can see, is a massive step up. It's doubled, basically, in terms of the number of shots on target that we were getting before. So that's really nice. That's what I want to see. Also, shots on target against has become, yeah, an average of 1 shot on target against per game and an average of 2.5 shots against per game. That won't last. That's just a blip from those 2 games, but at least we were able to do it in those 2 games. Long shots as well. They account for a tiny little bit less, if I recall. So, yeah, it was 17% before, and now it's 16%. Actually, I don't know if I even did that one afterwards. I think I might forgotten to do that one, but it's still, you know, it's slightly better. But I don't care if, you know, if we're having 7 or 8 long shots in a game, I don't care. If we're having 35 shots, that's still a lot of good quality shots. You're just going to get more at that point. Chances created per game is up to 3.5 per game over this period. But again, that will drop, but it's nice to see it back up. And chances against is only 0.5. Liverpool had that one opportunity. That's the only opportunity we've conceded in those 2 games, was the Joe Gomez header, which they did score from, to be fair. Goals per game is up to 2, and conceded is 0.5. That's not bad at all. So again, it's definitely made some positive changes and pushed us in the right direction. Now, options I've still got to do. Maybe change to a more narrow style of play. There's the option of being more disciplined from a creative standpoint. But I'm happy with this for now, and I'm going to try this for a couple of games. Dortmund is going to be crazy difficult today. So if it doesn't turn out perfectly in this game, I won't worry too much. I want to see how we do against Newcastle and then in some Premier League matches to see if we get our mojo back. And if we do, then I'll start to consider the situation sort of under control then. And we can start to concentrate on getting back into those Champions League places. And frankly, I want to be trying to aim in for second in the league this year to push towards Manchester United. I don't think we're going to win the league now. We're 10 points behind them. Considering at one point we were 8 points in front, you can see what a poor run of form will do to you. But I don't think there's going to be any more patches for quite a while now, which means if we can sort this out, we should be nice and steady for a few more seasons yet. So yeah, I don't expect us to do that much in the Champions League this year. I don't know, we'll have to see, basically. So yeah, that's basically that. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this little sojourn into some tactical analysis stuff. I hope that it's been informative. Not to me to tell you that this is what you should do. It's just, again, it's me saying what I've done and the conclusions I've come to based on that. We'll see if that pans out the way I want it to. It's going to be very aggressive to go like this against Dortmund, but I feel like we're in a position where that's really our only choice, is to be as aggressive as that, essentially. I also noticed that when Bednar plays here, or is it Dimitrov? I think it's Dimitrov, actually. He can't take fewer risks because, well, he's got some kind of trait that allows him to not do that. So thankfully with Bednar it's fine, but with Dimitrov, yeah, he's going to do some weird stuff occasionally. So yeah, I'll hand you back to me now, and I'll briefly run through the changes I've made there as well, and we can get into the first game of this episode properly. Hope you've enjoyed this. I guess smash a like on this video if you have. It doesn't matter, it's an unlisted video. And now, back to the studio.